Episode 2 of Apple TV Plus Servant Season 2 was titled Spaceman. With Natalie's help, Sean and Julian uncovering disturbing details about the cult, Dorothy sacrifices her career reputation for her family. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot back again with my weekly recap, breakdown, and review of the latest episode of Apple TV Plus Servant Season 2, Episode 2, which was titled Spaceman. This episode really focused a lot on Julian, and we're going to break it all down in this spoiler discussion. But before we dive into it, as you can see on the screen now, make sure you all are following me on all my other social media accounts like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, which you can find all those links in the description below. If you are new to the channel, welcome to the community. Consider subscribing, and while you're at it, hit that notification bell. That way you can get the alert when I drop new content. It would mean a lot to me if you all can like and share this review. It not only helps out the channel, but I also appreciate all the support. And in the comment section, let's discuss the second episode titled Spaceman. Let me know your pros, your cons. What did you think about Julian's kind of foreshadowing of his character, as well as what are your thoughts and theories for the weeks ahead. So before I get into the recap, I will say, as far as overall thoughts, again, this episode shines such a big light on Julian and him not believing in things. And I am to assume by the structuring of this episode and all the little Easter eggs, I wouldn't be surprised if Julian makes his way to the Lesser Saints cult. Now, I say that because he doesn't believe in something. Who's to say that he might want to, especially doing it for his sister Dorothy, he might want to infiltrate the group, and in doing so, he might become a believer of something greater than himself. So we'll talk about that obviously in this review, but also I mentioned last week I could see Dorothy or Sean maybe infiltrating the group, but after this episode, I might think that Julian might be that character to actually get a part of the group and might want to stay there because he believes in what they believe in. So let me know your thoughts there, but also just in general, the episode overall was entertaining. Now we catch up with Roscoe. I mentioned last week when we're going to see what happened to Roscoe. We get that in this episode. We see that Dorothy's willing to do whatever to see what's going on, to just speak to Jericho and figure out where Leanne's at. And then also Sean's still kind of doing his Sean thing with him just playing both sides of the fence, believing in Dorothy, but at the same time not really believing what's going on. But nonetheless, like I said, my favorite aspect of this episode was definitely foreshadowing for Julian's character. But overall, like I said, I enjoyed this episode. I just wish that we can catch up to Leanne, catch up with her aunt and uncle, and see what's going on with this greater, this lesser cult situation. But entertaining episode, but still a bit of a slow burn. But let me know your overall thoughts of this episode. Let's discuss it in the comments. So let's get into the recap as the episode opens up with the character I mentioned several times, with Julian as he's sleeping in Leanne's old bed. I don't know if you all noticed, but behind Julian, there were lions looking upon him while he was sleeping. Now, just last week when they kind of zoomed in, the very first shot was of that painting. I think that painting has a lot to say within the kind of maybe some of the through lines, some of the subplots that we get within this particular season, but in particularly going back to those lions looking down on Julian. Is that foreshadowing for him entering the lion's den? Again, going back to my thoughts of him joining the cult for he can maybe get the baby out, but then him actually staying in the cult because he believes in their ways. Something to think about, but also something to take away within his first opening scene. As he wakes up, he looks at that hole in the wall, and it's almost like symbolizing him having this emptiness inside of him, again, not believing in something. But also take note of that water running in the bathroom. No one in the house turned it on. Was that Leanne's doing? Because we know when Dorothy took a shower later in the episode, the water was shut off, but the water was turned on. Is that her way trying to talk, to communicate, to recruit Julian himself? Let me know your thoughts on that theory. But nonetheless, we cut to Dorothy as she's watching an old video of Leanne comforting the baby and being able to calm the baby down. And that was very interesting too, because again, that was technically the first time we saw Leanne in the season, even though it was an old video, but we haven't seen her quite yet. But it's the first appearance of the season for the character. But nonetheless, we see that there's a package that has arrived, and Dorothy thinks this is maybe another ransom, another note in the mail. But no, it is a spacesuit that Julian bought for Jericho, the child, for the baptism. Obviously, Dorothy's like, who buys a spacesuit for a child for a baptism? We know that Julian is the weird one, as he alludes to, but I think there's a little bit more subtext within that spacesuit, because we know he has that conversation with Natalie later in the episode regarding him wanting to travel to space and him, wanting to see what's out there. So I think there's some connection between that spacesuit and as well as the conversation we have later in this episode. But speaking of conversations, Dorothy and Julian have a conversation in regards to Dorothy feeling like she can connect to the baby. She knows when it's hungry, when it's crying. And it's really interesting that and this isn't a dig at Dorothy's character, but that's not even her child. She's able to feel that her baby's hungry and crying, but she wasn't able to see that her baby was literally dying in a car last season. So it's really kind of interesting. Again, is Dorothy really feeling these thoughts about missing this child that isn't even hers? Or is it really a connection that she had with this child that really wasn't hers? So again, it's just kind of like, is she playing into the idea of her losing her child and she's coming to the reality that she's really lost her child and it was her fault? Or now that the child's missing and it's not her fault, she's kind of playing into this whole mom that's willing to do anything to get her child back. Again, Dorothy's a very interesting character. I'm not saying that she doesn't care about losing her child that died last season and also losing this child that isn't hers, but it's just really interesting to see how she's able to connect to a child that she didn't even give birth to, but she wasn't able to connect to the child that was locked in a car for an entire day. But that's just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts on just kind of the mindset of the Dorothy character. But speaking of Dorothy, we see that she calls Julian an atheist. Again, this points to the fact that he doesn't believe in anything, and we see he puts the suit on the baby, which for a second there I thought the baby was going to turn its head and be like very Chucky-like, but it didn't do that. But again, it speaks to the conversation that he has with Natalie later in the episode. So last week I had mentioned, where the hell is Roscoe? What happened to him? Is he dead? Is he recruited in the cult? Well, he makes his appearance in this season, in this second episode. He is in the last place he remembers, which is in his car. Cut to another scene here. We see another YouTube video that Dorothy is watching, but this one is definitely more disturbing than what we saw last week in the clip of Aunt May being embarrassed or made fun of and the water or whatever being thrown on her head in the mall. This time we see the cult in action. We see, I assume, one of the members of the Lesser Saints. He's whipping himself with, like embracing the pain. But something that I noticed in that scene, that object in front of him, it seems like it's the same object that Roscoe was describing. I didn't see a hook on its hand, but it looked like it was made of straw, and it's something I can see people worshiping. So it'll be really interesting if we get this character or this object making its way into a human form. I don't know, is that Sean? Because we know that Sean was almost becoming a straw-like character when he was pulling out wood out of his mouth. But again, I wonder if we're going to see this character or whoever they worship or what they worship. What do they believe in? It's really interesting there. But I took note of that object that he was kind of worshiping or beating himself in front of. But cut to, I also want to point out, there was some really cool shots in this episode, whether it be the shot from when the camera was on top of Dorothy and Julian on top of the staircase, or it's a shot when Dorothy's watching that video and she's kind of in a box within a box. I thought it was a lot of cool shots and kind of symbolizing the character's mindset in this episode. So really cool. I always love the cinematography in this show. But cut to Sean hearing someone knocking on the door. Really cool shot here. He can't see them from the neck down. I think he's assuming that was Uncle George because he grabs like a fork or whatever the case may be. But obviously it was Roscoe, and we hear Roscoe saying, "Oh, I was just outside. How did you clean up the toys and all the stuff from the baptism?" Again, he's thinking that this is Monday, but it's actually Friday, 4 days since he's been missing. Cut to Dorothy. We see that she's been called into work and she wants to go to work to talk to Jericho. She believes that she can reassure him on television and maybe that she can have some mommy time. Again, Dorothy's kind of losing it and she's already lost it since last season, but nonetheless, we cut to Roscoe. Now, thinking that it's Monday and the last thing he remembers is seeing a woman in the streets and he wanted to help her out. Obviously, that was Aunt May, and we remember that was from the season finale. But Sean and Julian watched this, which I thought was very convenient. He was recording what was going on when he was taken by Leanne, or I should say Uncle George, I assume, and Aunt May. But they play the video, and the video says that he recorded. He says to make it stop, and Leanne is there. "We're here to help you," Leanne says. "Nothing bad is going to happen to you." And obviously that's when we see Sean comes with the idea to hypnotize him so they can kind of remember what's going on. But again, I thought it was very convenient that he was recording what was going on. Again, I know he's a private investigator. Maybe he did that intentionally, just subconsciously, like, let me record this so I can know what's happening. But again, Leanne, everything's going to be okay. Nothing's going to happen to you. I wonder if they've influenced him, put something in him. Is he just a vessel for them to kind of see what's going on in the house? Something to keep an eye on nonetheless. But as she arrives, Natalie, I'm speaking of, when she arrives to do the hypnosis, again, take note that she says, "Oh, did Julian have anything to say about me coming over here?" Because he doesn't believe in things. Again, they hit it on the head so many times that he's a non-believer. He's a non-believer. But I think sooner rather than later, he's going to believe something greater than himself. But cut to, we see Natalie. She puts Roscoe under this hypnosis, and I took note of everything that he said. So in this scene, we hear him say a lot of interesting stuff, starting off with, they've taken him into a room. They won't turn on the lights. His hands were tied with straw. We never left. The smell, rotten. He's behind the door. Knees. They are on their knees for him. They're bleeding. His hand is a hook. Crying. The baby's crying. 4-4 baby, passing baby forward. He's holding him. Eyes. He takes their eyes out and throws them away. So this was a really great scene, creepy as hell scene. But again, let's just talk about what he's mentioning. There's a man with a hook on his hand. He's had his hands are bound by straw. Again, that character that we saw when Dorothy was looking at the video, that seemed like a character that was made out of straw. I didn't see a hook on the hand, but what are they worshiping? What does this straw character with the hook on the hand symbolize? And also, where are they in Philadelphia? What is that smell? Why is it rotten? But more importantly, they're taking the eyes out and throwing them away. Is that literally taking the eyes out of the cult members, out of the baby that they created? Or is it just a metaphor of just kind of like your eyes have not seen the truth until you have joined this cult and now you can see the truth? I don't know. I can't wait to see one of our members lead into the cult, whether again that's Dorothy or Sean or Julian himself, seeing what actually is going on. Because if you all notice in that scene, Julian's crying. He's literally crying in that moment. It's almost like, I don't know, has Julian been in this room before? Has he witnessed what Roscoe has seen? I don't know. Only time will tell, but he was crying. That really kind of spoke to him. He believed in what was going on, even though in the very next scene he says, oh, wasn't that an audience? Wasn't that just a performance? Again, there's a little bit more with Julian than meets the eye, but we see Dorothy at work and she's speaking to the TV like there's a baby watching television. Very kind of comedic moment there. But again, going back to Natalie talking to Julian. And again, this kind of hits it on the head in regards to him. What are your motives? As she asks, why are you so interested in finding this baby? He says, it's for my sister, but there's more than just a sister, right? In regards to finding this child. We see them have a conversation. We get this kind of backstory with Julian as he talks about he wanted to travel to space, deep into space, past the icy planets, wanted to reach the end and bang on the wall, but turns out there's no wall. So he decided not to go. Again, what happened to Julian in his past? Why is he not able to believe in something? Why is he so gung-ho on finding this child for his sister? Obviously, he's a loving brother. He sometimes put himself before others, but there's something definitely more to dive deeper into with Julian. Again, him not being a believer, what he's faced in the past. Has he come across this cult in the past, ladies and gentlemen? Is that something that we can maybe theorize there? But nonetheless, I kind of love that we get the onions peeled behind this character that always seems to be joking, doesn't take things too seriously, doesn't believe in things. But I am to assume, based on this episode, that sooner rather than later, Julian's going to find something to believe in, and it might be the Lesser Saints cult. But wrapping up the episode, we get some scenes here. We see Dorothy makes the announcement that she's looking for Leanne, and she says goodnight to the audience, and, assuming that she thinks that Jericho's watching. We get a really small but a very important scene where we see Dorothy and Sean as she's cleaning out the caramel out of the pan, and we see, they put it on the stove, and it's bubbling, but they're sitting there hugging each other, and they're smiling, or, Sean's comforting Dorothy, but I think that was symbolizing something that's going on with those characters. They're smiling on the outside, they're comforting each other on the outside, but they're boiling from within as we hear the boiling kind of happen in front of them. I thought that was really kind of neat moment there. But wrapping up the episode, we see that Dorothy's taking a shower. Sean gets a call. It's Leanne, and as we see the water cuts off, again, going back to the beginning of the episode with the water running, we see that the cracks from the basement are starting to come back open again. There's water coming out of it again. Leanne has this hold over this house, and she can do things with her abilities, but nonetheless, it's important to note here, she says to Sean, why is she looking for me? Why haven't you told her what she did? As we know, and as Uncle George told Sean last season, when she likes you, she likes you. She takes care of you. She does miracles for you. But when you're on her bad side, you don't want to end up on her bad side. As we see, Sean can no longer taste. He can no longer feel pain. Maybe he's becoming that straw figure that they worship. But also, who's to say that maybe Leanne's going to put her spell on Dorothy and she's going to start to lose some sense of who she is as a person. So, really interesting episode. Again, I thought there's a lot of foreshadowing regarding Julian traveling to space, having the spacesuit, Julian not being a believer, having that moment of crying in the basement when Roscoe told them what happened, and him traveling to these unknown territories, going into the lion's den potentially and infiltrating this group and maybe even staying a part of this cult, something to keep eye on. And also, like I mentioned earlier, Dorothy and her emotions about this child missing, and she didn't really have those same emotions for her real child. She just kind of blinked. She forgot about it. She suppressed the pain and the trauma. But now that her child is missing, is this her making up for her not really having that emotional moment with her real child dying? A lot to dive into. Nonetheless, like I said, a really entertaining episode, but I really want to catch up to Leanne and Uncle George and Aunt May and really kind of meet this cult and see what they're all about and who is this figure, this straw-like figure with the hook on his hand. Let's talk about all that in the comments again. Let me know your pros, your cons, your thoughts, your theories, and of course, let's break it all down in the comment section. As always, thank you all for watching this review. Make sure if you haven't already to like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit the bell. That way you don't miss any of my other content. Thank you all for watching this review. Hope you're staying safe, and we'll see you on the next video.